take a seat and pay attention, because I've been wanting to talk about this one. This is a very interesting story. You're going to want to watch this. A young man, a college baseball player from Australia, gunned down at just 23 years of age by 3 teens in a small Oklahoma town. His girlfriend is today struggling to come to terms with the murder of Chris Lane and what's being called a thrill killing.
It's the hardest thing you could ever imagine happening, and I think there's still a lot of shock and disbelief and a lot of anger and sadness. That's just every emotion flooded in.
Okay, so it is not just the shocking details of this crime that's getting people upset. For a conservative radio host, for some of them, they say there's an elephant in the room that the mainstream media aren't talking about, and that's race.
There's something missing here. Can you tell me what that is? Can you tell me what that is? What's missing in this story?
And they do it every time.
Do it every time. Every time.
So you almost are guaranteed that if the race isn't mentioned in a story like this,
it's because they're black.
Boy, they're being drawn to this reluctantly. They really don't want to get anywhere near this. And the reason they don't is because this is black on white crime. And that doesn't happen in the mainstream media world that they portray. In the mainstream media world that they present us each and every day, black on white crime doesn't happen.
Okay, so let's talk about this now with Ben Ferguson. He's a CNN political commentator. He's a guy right here in this monitor. Marc Lamont Hill sitting next to me, professor at Columbia University and host of HuffPost Live. I intentionally did not read the notes on how either of you feel about this, because I wanted to come naturally here.
Fair enough.
All right. They have a point that Trayvon Martin, race became an issue in this, but this didn't. Do they have a point?
No, they don't have a point. First of all, the media coverage on this has been probably more intense than it was on Trayvon right after it happened. It took months for the Trayvon Martin controversy to come to the national media, and it only came to the national media
because he wasn't arrested.
Because there was no arrest, because there was so much dysfunction in the process. Here, the alleged killers have been arrested. They've been charged. If this had happened with Trayvon, we wouldn't even know who Trayvon was.
Is that... But many will say that is making an excuse because race is a third rail in this country. And anyone who is, if you're talking about it, if it had been 3 white guys, and it had done that to a black guy, immediately the media would have jumped to race. Ben Ferguson, go ahead.
Yeah, well, not only that, but you would have had Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, and many other leaders out there that would be doing exactly what they did with Trayvon Martin. And in this case, it's a white kid that's profiled. We now know from some of the tweets from one of the guys that had the gun that he said, "White people disgust me." And another time he said, "I hate all white people." And there was multiple tweets based on race in there, dropping the N-word and then saying, "I got the whiteys," and that kind of thing. This is a crime that it's pretty obvious had some racial implications to it, truly. By those that did the crime, they go out and find a random white person who's running and kill him. How does race not be a part of this? And even the issue of, can it be a hate crime? I think
all right, Ben. Don't filibuster. Let the man get in.
Ben, those are strawmen. I have yet to meet anybody who says that killing a white person isn't a hate crime. I have not met anyone who has said that this wasn't driven by race. They said we're going to kill a white person. That is by race. If that is in fact the case, it's a race crime. It's a hate crime. That's not the issue. The issue here is if there's a double standard or not, and there is not a double standard.
And there is. I think there is.
Hold on, Ben.
And here's the difference.
How, Ben?
Here's the difference. When you have something like Trayvon Martin that comes out, and you have marches, and you have pastors, and you have people that are going out there, and all they're doing is beating on race, 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 and then the same exact thing happens. And
okay, let's do point by point here. Let's do point by point. So you said you have pastors coming out. No one's stopping white pastors from coming out and saying anything about it. If it is, so white pastors can have the opportunity to come out if they want to. Ben?
And who would cover that? And more importantly, they would say they're out of touch and, well, they're racist because they're coming out having some white march.
If we had white pastors coming out...
Because of the double standard.
I think the distinction that we're
that's
saying
the whole
here,
double standard.
we're talking about, is there a double standard with the media? I think you're talking about, is there a double standard with the law, or are you saying
I'm
with
saying
the media?
There is no media double standard.
I'm saying
the media
specifically with the media.
I'm talking to Mark.
The media doesn't jump every time a white person does something to a black person. White people rob, rape, kill black people all the time, and vice versa. The media doesn't cover every ordinary local crime. The reason Trayvon got covered by the national media was because there was a national spectacle attached to it because of the dysfunction. There was no arrest, the way the bodies were treated. There was a set of issues that didn't work properly. The reason why this isn't being swarmed by the national media is because everything worked properly. The guys were arrested. They should have been arrested. They've been charged. They should have been charged. Again, if George Zimmerman had been arrested and charged, we wouldn't even know who Trayvon Martin is. And Ben, you have to acknowledge the national media did not jump on Trayvon Martin. There were no marches about Trayvon Martin until months later.
Mark, here's part of the issue with the double standard. Are these young men even have the possibility of being charged with a hate crime based on the laws we have today, even though you admit this obviously was a targeted killing of a race? And we never see African Americans, when they target someone specifically on race, be charged with a hate crime the same way that if it was flipped around. Why are they not charged with a hate crime here?
We don't know yet.
This is the instance I'm naming.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing, though, Ben. I understand what Mark is saying, because it has been what, a week now since this has happened, and it took weeks before there was national outcry with the Trayvon Martin case. So I understand. As I'm sitting watching this on my days off, I'm watching all the networks, and as the information comes out, there may be information that comes out as you look at in their social media, as you look at whatever they were writing online or to each other, that may come out in the coming days. But to immediately jump on it and say there is a double standard, I think it's jumping the gun a little bit here.
All right. Well, I'll say this, okay? If there is a gang initiation that happens in this country, and 2 or 3 or 4 African American men go out and shoot and kill a white guy, how often does that get covered?
When does that happen? You're making up hypotheticals.
It happened to me. Happened to me. It's not a hypothetical. It happened to me as a human being. No one cares about that article because that is not an issue where there is race involved per se.
Ben, can I ask you one quick question? Can you admit that we've talked about? Can you acknowledge that we've talked about this killing of the Australian baseball player far more than we've talked about the killing of Trayvon Martin a week after it happened?
I think as soon as it goes national, that's obvious. And I think, but Trayvon Martin, the fact that the way that race was used to continue that forward was far outside of this and even remote possibilities. That was over a year-long case in the public media.
Okay, go with me on this. Can you guys back the prompter up? I want to put those tweets in there a little bit because they've gone, and I don't have the page for them. Can we go back? Because I want you to go through. I want to go through what they said online here to see if Ben actually does have a point. Okay, and if this had been investigated earlier, might he have even more of a point? Okay, so just after the shooting or before the shooting, James Edwards, the youngest of the 3, tweeted this, that he and his friends were ready to take some lives. Back in April, he posted 90% of white people are nasty. He posted rap videos and talked about being a gangster. What does this say about the culture and the kind of people or person he might be?
In conjunction with the acts that he allegedly committed, they say a lot. But there's no way ahead of time that we could look at someone who celebrates rap music and do some criminal intervention. If we did that, we'd be intervening on half of America and many young white people in the suburbs.
But you don't think that the media would be jumping on this if let's say the situation was reversed and they said, oh well, 90% of black people are bad and we're gonna go out and kill people.
I think people would look at that as a sign of something problematic and they would use that as evidence for a hate crime. I think the same thing should happen here. All I'm saying is a week after the murder, it's too early to say that we haven't done it. That's all I'm saying.
But Mark,
give it some time.
Then I got to go quickly. Hurry up.
Here's the core issue. If this would have been switched and those tweets would have gone out, we would have had the first charge be a hate crime, and there still has not been a hate crime charge to any of these 3 people. That is the double standard at its core.
Then why wasn't George Zimmerman tried with a hate crime?
So listen, there's a lot to discuss here. It's a great conversation. It's worth asking. I think that both of you make some really good points here.
I convinced Ben he agrees with me now.
But really say we have to remember here there's someone who is dead, and it's a tragic story all the way around. Thank you, guys.